नमस्कार। स्वागत है आप सभी का सूत्रधार के सूत्रधार टॉक्स के आज के एपिसोड का ही सुनी, जिसमें हम लोग बात करेंगे द आयरन लेडी ऑफ द कुरु डायनेस्टी। And to talk about this particular interesting lady from our ancient history, we have Deepak. Namaste, Deepak.
नमस्ते गौरव जी।
तो दीपक के बारे में पहले दो चार शब्द बता देते हैं। दीपक को आप लोगों ने दीपक के पोस्ट सूत्रधार के वेबसाइट में देखे होंगे, जहां पे दीपक इज अ रेगुलर कंट्रीब्यूटर फॉर द सीरीज कॉल्ड महाभारत फॉर बिगिनर्स। And we are currently towards the end of Aranya Parv in that series. Apart from that, Deepak has published a few books, I think 3 books already, and one anthology, right? So you are part of 4 books so far.
Two anthology.
2 anthology. Yes, sorry, Arya,
Unsung
I
Valor
forgot.
and
Unsung Valor and Arya. So in both of them, Deepak has contributed with one story each, and then he has written a novel on Abhimanyu, and which is very popular. And then he has also written a book on Lata Mangeshkar, which is available on Kindle. It is his tribute to the great lady who left us, I think, last year, right? So after Lata Mangeshkar's demise, Deepak had published this very heartfelt note from his side, which you can check out. And today we will talk about this subject matter because of the book Arya. In this recently published anthology by Indic Academy, Deepak has contributed with the story of Satyavati. And as per Deepak's story, Satyavati was the Iron Lady of Kuru Dynasty who literally saved the dynasty from extinction. And we will talk about that with Deepak. So today's session is dedicated to Satyavati. So welcome Deepak. आज हम आपसे बात करेंगे सत्यवती की। और मेरा आपसे पहला क्वेश्चन ये है कि आपको ये सत्यवती के बारे में लिखने की प्रेरणा कैसे मिली? Why did you think that you should pick up Satyavati as, because I think the topic was remarkable Vedic women, and there are a plenty. I mean, you would not be scrambling for characters. You would be like spoiled for choice, right? So why did you choose Satyavati?
So namaste Gaurav ji, and once again thank you for inviting to the show, and thank you for helping the authors of Arya in promoting our book. So like you said, there are many characters in the Mahabharata and in the Ramayana and our other Puranas, very strong women. But I'm writing more about Mahabharata, so that is why I focus more on Mahabharata when this topic came up. So the first name which comes up is obviously Draupadi, but the problem is so many people have written about Draupadi. So as we all know, our well-known author Sai Swarupa Iyer, who is a mentor to all of us, she has written a bestseller book. So there's nothing that I can do uh, extra, and I don't want to write on Draupadi just for the sake of writing. So the immediate next name that came to my mind was Satyavati. Now, the reason is there's a very popular perception that Satyavati is a selfish lady, cruel lady, greedy lady. She did everything for her benefit, for her personal benefit, so that her children could sit on the throne. A typical dynast who wants to sit on the throne, who wants to reserve it for her family members, and who was unscrupulous, who did anything just to fulfill her desires. So that is a common perception. So generally, there are two views of Satyavati, which you will see in most TV shows. One is this image of selfish lady, or the other thing is they just ignore her. They don't consider her at all. They just show her in the starting Shantanu and Bhishma Shapata episode, and after that they just ignore her. So I wanted to read more about her. I wanted to learn more about her. And what came to my mind was that she was the first woman ruler of Bharata. That was my belief. So to start my research, I just went to Google and said, "Who is the first woman ruler of India?" And to my surprise, it said Razia Sultana.
I
So
I was
that
about to
was
say that
ridiculous because Razia Sultana came so
much
long
later. Yeah.
later. So before that itself, there are so many queens. So if we do a little more research, we will see about Queen Didda of Kashmir, who was of course
Correct.
a tyrant, a very terrible lady. But some believe that she was the first queen. But then we go back further to the Vedic period. Then we find a story about Yashomati, who was made queen of Kashmir by Krishna. So this is not in the
Hmm.
Mahabharata. I think it comes in Neela Mata Purana, I think it's called. Some
Okay.
stories related to Kashmir. So Krishna kills a king called Damodara, and his pregnant wife, Yashomati, he makes her the queen. So that is one of the first references. So then, as you know, we have our fellow author and friend Pranshu Saxena, who is the human version of ChatGPT. So he said that Bhagirath's wife was sitting on the throne when he was out on his
Penance, yes, he was
journey.
performing penance.
Yeah. So, but that was a stopgap arrangement. In his
Yes.
absence, she was sitting on the throne. But in the case of Satyavati, her husband had died, her son was dead, and the only other person who could be king, who was the right successor, he had given up. So Bhishma had given up,
Hmm.
and he was not ready to sit. So Satyavati sat on the throne of Hastinapura and she ruled.
Yeah,
And it was
without
not
any
an easy
challenges.
time to rule. It was not an easy time to rule because
Correct.
there were other kingdoms who were eyeing the Kuru kingdom, and that was the time when probably they realized that she was weak. In fact, there is a story about that which is mentioned in my story. The Panchala king, Ugrayudha,
Ugrayud.
yeah, Ugrayudha Paurava. So he sent a message to Satyavati saying that, "Give me your kingdom and you also come to me. So marry me and give me your kingdom." So she tells Bhishma, and we all know what Bhishma can do. So he
Yeah.
destroys Ugrayudha, and that is a very interesting episode because from that time Panchala comes over to the Hastinapura side.
Yeah, Drupad's
Then
family.
Drupada's father sits on the throne.
Correct.
So the point is that she was the queen. She sat on the throne and ruled the kingdom. Yes, it is true. Bhishma was there. But she was the one who was sitting on the throne and actually ruling. So this is a very interesting character. Then I tried to find out more about her. So Mahabharata, of course, when we go through the original text, we find a lot of references. Then there are also references in the Devi Bhagavata Purana. So I could find some references there. So what I felt was that she was not really selfish or greedy. She did everything for the Kuru dynasty, not for herself. So do we have any proof of that? Yes. In the end, what should she get? Nothing. She lost her husband, she lost her children, and Bhishma had to take a vow so that she could marry Shantanu. But in the end, she tells Bhishma that you come sit on the throne and rule this kingdom. So it is not that she has decided that her family only should be on the throne. When she realizes that it is not possible, then she invites Bhishma to come back to the throne. So I felt that was a big decision that she had taken. Then, of course, she took many other decisions, which is discussed in my story and which many people would probably know. All these decisions had a very, very powerful impact on the Kuru dynasty. In fact, it won't be wrong to say that the Kuru dynasty would have probably ended. Shantanu was the last of the Kuru dynasty, and Bhishma was refusing to sit on the throne. So that would be the end of the Kuru dynasty. So that was then she took an important decision, and that decision, we can say, changed the course of history. So that was why I was interested to write about Satyavati. And then, of course, her decision impacted two people, Ambika and Ambalika. So I felt, let me not write from Satyavati's point of view, but instead let me write from the point of view of Ambika. Because Satyavati's decision had a very big impact on Ambika's life. So that was how I came out with the concept of the story. In fact, when this anthology idea came about, I sent a mail to Shiv Kumar and requested him that he please reserve Satyavati for me. I want to write on Satyavati. Don't give that story to anyone else. So that's how the process started, and it went through many changes. So, as Shivkumar explained previously, there was a workshop by Professor Otis, who is a Stanford professor. So, he saw the story and he looked at it from a different perspective, and as a result, a lot of changes happened. So, it went through many changes, and the final version is there before the readers. So, I would not like to go into more details of the story. Those who have not read, I request our readers to please take a look at the story.
Yeah, I mean, everyone should read the story. Actually, my second question you have already answered. That you have written it from Ambika's perspective. So I would not get too much into it. But if I had written the story, I would have probably picked up Ambalika to write the story, because Ambalika had two women to look up to, and it would have been a very interesting perspective. कि, okay, दीदी भी ये कर रही हैं, should I? मतलब, it would have been slightly easier for her, probably. I don't know, and she would have probably looked at Satyavati with a different lens than Ambika would have, because she was, in short, following her elder sister in
Correct.
many cases. So, I mean, maybe somebody will pick up that also at some point in time. My next question, since you have mentioned everybody should read the story, my question is why? Because why it is important that people should know the real Satyavati, or the Satyavati as Iron Lady rather than a greedy lady. How does it matter? What changes if you know the wrong story versus the right story? So, the importance of telling the right story, that is something I want you to touch upon.
Yes, this is something which is very important, and this is something which both of us have been working on. So, I have been part of a YouTube series called as Mahabharata Myths. You were also there in that. Our other author friends, Pranshu, Bharti, they were also there. Vijay Krishna of Bharat Narratives. And then you have done Mythbusters on Sutradhar. So, wherein you have covered certain myths. Now, this is a big problem with the Mahabharata and also Ramayana. So, I think last week you were talking about Ravana. The
Yes.
popular story is Ravana is a great scholar, a very well versed, learned man, and so he was so much respected that when he was dying, Rama sent Lakshmana to him that go and learn from him. So this is a very
Yes.
popular story, but it is
Is
obviously
similar to the golden tooth of Karn.
golden tooth of God. So this is one example from the Ramayana. Now, if we look at there is a lot of examples. So many that he rejected Karna because he was from Loka. Drona rejected Karna because he was from a Loka. So there are so many such stories that Shakuni used the bones of his father to play dice. So there are hundreds of such myths. Now,
Yes.
unfortunately, what has happened? These myths have become popular for two reasons. One is TV shows have focused on that. Now, the reason they did it is they want their show to be dramatic, so that's why they did it. And then many authors also have done that. So again, they have freedom of speech; they can do what they want. But as people who have read the original text and who believe that we should not meddle with what Vyasa has written, the core story. See, as an author, uh, I cannot write exactly what Vyasa has written. If I write that, then why will someone publish it? So there must be something which I will add through maybe dialogue, some small scenes here and there, some small creative liberties. Sorry, it's one thing to take creative liberty, and it is another thing to change the story itself. For example, there are popular stories that Draupadi was in love with Karna. So there is nothing more silly than this, because
Yes.
he was the cause of all her problems. Her problem started because of the Jita Sabha when they tried to do the Vastraharana. And who was responsible for that? Not Duryodhana, not Shakuni, it was Karna. He was the one who ordered Dushasana to disrobe her. So when such is the case, why will she fall in love with him? But these are stories which have become popular for whatever reason. So I believe that we must try and put the correct picture out. So that is why what all the characters from our Puranas, we must try and put them in the right perspective. So that was my aim while writing this story. So about Satyavati too, the popular perception is that uh, She was selfish. She did everything for herself. But in the end, she left everything and went away. So that was something which people should know. They should know the real story. And they should know what role she played for the future. Without her, it is possible that the Kuru dynasty might have ended. There is a possibility that Jarasandha might have come and taken over the throne. We don't know. It might have happened. So many things could have happened. But her decisions were very important and it played a major role on Itihasa. So that is why I believe that we must tell the right story, and that is why I tried to present Satyavati's story in this format.
And I believe that it is also important from the perspective that we often have this belief that women did not play active role in the day to day, I mean, in the ruling the kingdom or taking decisions or managing the society, if I can call it,
Correct.
or managing the kingdom. This
Correct.
clearly busts that narrative. And one thing which I think you have not touched upon in your story, but it is a very important point that if you look at it, Bhishma was a very accomplished guy. He could kill Ugrayudh when he wanted to, right? And Ugrayudh was someone who was a big deal, right? Devi Bhagavad has a few pages dedicated to him.
Yes.
Now, if Bhishma was the king, the Kuru dynasty would not have been on its decline, Hastinapur would not have been on its decline, and Pandu was not needed to go on a Digvijay.
Correct.
Right. So
Correct.
basically, because Bhishma was not the king, Bhishma
Yes.
was just following the orders, and it was Satyavati who was giving the orders. She chose to rule in a certain way, right?
Yes.
She did not try to exert her authority on all over neighboring kingdoms or whatever you call it. But had Bhishma been the king, we could have probably, because Bhishma had already gone on Digvijay during his father's time. So it was not
Yes.
something that he has not done before. And he could have very easily done it. And then that is how he was trained to rule the kingdom. But Satyavati was not trained to rule the kingdom that way. So she chose her own path, and instead of following the advice of Bhishma, which is what most people look at it in a way, but it was in all likelihood other way around.
Yes.
Satyavati was the one who was ordering. She was not just stamping on the decisions that Bhishma was taking.
Yes.
So
Yes.
that is something which is very important. And you mentioned like probably the first independent woman ruler that we have had. Another name comes to my mind, not necessarily independent, but Dushala also,
Yes.
for a period,
Correct. Yes.
probably would have ruled the
After
kingdom while her
Jayadratha's death.
grandson. Yeah, no, after Jayadratha, even Jayadrat's son died during Ashwamedh
Yeah.
Parv, right? And
But she
and
comes a
her
bit
grandson
later.
was very small.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Dushala must have ruled the kingdom while the child comes of age, right? Gita Press had chosen to show a very small toddler in their illustration.
Yes.
So the toddler would be just authority who is stamped there, installed there, while the actual ruling would have been done by Dushala. And she, I believe, is another character which someday somebody will probably tell her story also,
Yeah.
because she was loved by both Kaurava and Pandavas, and she would have felt the emotions for both of them. And then she would marry to somebody like Jadrath, who was like tried to kidnap Draupadi and did all that stuff that he did. I
Yeah. Because
think her life would.
for her sake, Yudhishthira gives away
Exactly. Yudhishthir
Jayadratha
did
his
not
life.
allow Bhim to
Yeah.
kill Jayadrath because of Dushala, because he liked Dushala and he loved her as his sister,
Yes.
which she was. I mean, the cousin, but she was the sister.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
we talked about the story per se, that Satyavati as an Iron Lady, but you have chosen to set up the story in a particular context where Satyavati has already given away everything,
Yes.
and she is living in the jungle in a Vanaprastha or a sannyas stage. And then Ambika is the narrator of her story, and you have tried to put this into perspective, that how Ambika felt about Satyavati and what her thoughts are. Now, if we, let's say, analyze this Iron Lady and this the myth that you talked about, the selfish lady, or maybe an enchantress, or whatever you name you give it, because in typically one TV serial, I'm forgetting which version it was. They have dedicated a few episodes to the romance of Satyavati and Shantanu. He's shown she boating around with her and other stuff. So let's go back to that time, and this whole selfish lady comes from the perspective that somebody, like her father, demanded Shantanu a certain condition. Whether that came from Satyavati or not is a gray area, right? So if somebody believes that Satyavati prompted her father to ask for that kind of a thing, then maybe they are right in believing what they believe. However, what are your thoughts? Was it Satyavati's idea or was it her father's idea, and why you think that way?
Before that, we'll just go back a little bit before to the incident between Satyavati and Parashara. So, those of our viewers who don't know about it, they can read it in the story. But that is when Parashara desires Satyavati. But she's just a young girl, right? And of course, she's actually from a royal family, but she grows up as a fisher girl, belonging to a fisherwoman's family, or rather, the fisher king's daughter. But here was a great sage, very powerful sage. But she puts a condition to him. She says that if you want me, the son we have must be as accomplished as you, maybe even more accomplished than you, and he must be great. So you can just imagine, she's supposed to be, theoretically speaking, she's a illiterate fisher girl. That is the theoretical image of Satyavati. But she has the guts to put a condition to the great sage Parashara, and he accepts it. So why does he accept it? Is it that he was so much, besotted with her, or is it that he knew that destiny required that this should happen? So, because of their union, Veda Vyasa was born, Krishna Dvaipayana, and he is the one who is the narrator of the story. He is the one who wrote the Mahabharata and the Puranas. So here again, Satyavati played a role, and we see her side as not a scheming lady, but as a powerful lady. She did not tell that our son should become the king of the world. She chose wisdom for him. She chose wisdom for her son Vyasa, not power. So then later on, we see the incident wherein Shantanu falls in love with her. She didn't do anything to entice Shantanu. It was he who went behind her. And as you pointed out, there was a condition put. Now, in the story, it is her father who puts the condition. But obviously, he wouldn't have done without her knowledge. So now the question comes, was she greedy? Was she selfish? So there are two things here. One is her destiny. So she was a royal. She was actually the daughter of Vasu Parichara, who was a royal king. And he had two children. One he took away with him, and the other one he gave to the fisher king. So Dasharaja, her father, knew that Satyavati was from a royal family, and she was destined to be a queen. He knew that, and he wanted to make that true. So there was nothing wrong in demanding that her son should be the next king of Hastinapur. And she also agreed to that. The reason is that for one of her sons, she chose wisdom. So there's nothing wrong in choosing a kingdom for her other son, so that her children would be accomplished. Mind you, she didn't ask anything for herself. She didn't say that give me the kingdom, you give me gold, or you give me this, you give me that. She asked that, or rather her father asked that their son, Shantanu and Satyavati's son, should be the next king. So again, she had the future of the kingdom, future of the Kuru dynasty in mind. So according to me, I don't think that is really selfish. It shows that she had a very clear mind, a very clear vision. She knew what she wanted, and she was not scared of saying that, whether it was before Parashara or whether it was before Shantanu. And later on, we see that there is very interesting dialogue with Bhishma, which comes in the story. So she's not scared to speak her mind. So that is why, according to me, she's an Iron Lady, because she was very clear about what she wanted. She was very clear about her goals. She was not scared. She was not, see, like you pointed out, at that time, the status of women was not, like how it was later on. Women were basically considered weak. But at that time, she was able to dictate terms to a great sage like Parashara and a great king like Shantanu. Right? Both of them opposite ends. One is a great sage, another is a great king. But she dictated terms to both of them. And then in the end, she sits on the kingdom of the Kuru dynasty, and she rules. She takes very important decisions that changes the course of history. And when the time comes, she gives up everything and goes away. So that is there in the story. So why she gave up, who told her to give up, to know that our reader, our viewers should read the book. But she gives up everything. So that was the starting point I took for my story, as you pointed out. So she is in Vanaprastha. She's waiting to give up her life and probably go to the world of Mahadeva. And in my story, I have not made her speak or say anything. Of course, she speaks in the flashback. So there is a series of flashback in the story. So I've tried to project her as an enigmatic lady, as a lady who was decisive, who was very clear what she wanted. So that is why,
And a
according
lady
to
of few
I can
words.
lady of few words in the first part of the story. Otherwise, I'm sure she had a lot of words to say. Otherwise, she could not
And
rule a big kingdom.
yeah, and as you pointed out, she was desired by a man of wisdom and a man of power, both.
Yes, yes,
So it's not like that she was some ordinary lady.
yes,
And I believe that her father also knew that, right? He was the one
yes,
who found her, and her
yes,
twin brother, who
yes,
ended up setting up the Matsya kingdom. That is another interesting part of the story, which many viewers might not know.
yes,
But if you look at it, in the end, the Parikshit was the blood of Satyavati, who sat
yes,
on the throne, because he was
yes,
descending from Uttara, who was the daughter of the Matsya king, who was a descendant of
correct.
Satyavati's twin brother, who chose the
Much,
life of the uh, yeah, Uparichar Vasu chose to take him with himself and give away Satyavati to the Matseraj, the fisherman, the king of
correct.
fishermen. So the Satyavati's father also knew that she is a special lady, right? Not every day women come out, kids come out of a fish. So he knew that this girl is special, and I think he would have been at the forefront of this decision making, that her sons or her descendants should become the king. And I believe that Satyavati was the kind of enigmatic lady, the way, as we established, that she was desired by both Parasha and Shantanu. She was someone who did not need to say the words to get what she wanted. Right. She did negotiate and she got what she wanted from Parashar, right? So she could have done that if the need be, but that is not what is shown in Mahabharata, and there must have been a reason, right? Because in the Parashar
Yes,
exchange, it's between Satyavati and Parashar. But Vyasa has deliberately shown the exchange with Shantanu between him and her father.
yes,
He could have very well shown the exchange between Satyavati and Shantanu, and he deliberately kept it quiet there. So it's my personal belief that it was probably her father who came up with this thought and who insisted upon it, and whether she had the knowledge of it or not is a different matter.
correct.
She would have known, however, she might not have asked for it actively, and because she did not has not shown any desire to be the king. That was a responsibility that was thrust upon her because of
Correct.
the circumstances. She did not choose it, and as you have pointed out, and it is covered in the story also, that it she actually asked Bhishma to break his vow and sit on the throne, and he actually says, "Why don't you marry Ambika and Ambalika?" And then Bhishma tells the story of Dirghatamas, and the whole Ved Vyasa episode starts. And as you mentioned, Vyasa was not the composer of Mahabharat. It was the story of his grandchildren.
Yes.
The Pandavas and Kauravas were literally Vyasa's grandchildren, and so, and how big this decision you think would have been in case, because we had there was a narration of Dirghtama's story, right, where this thing happened, and
Yes.
before that there is a story of Kalmashpad also, where Vashisht produces heirs to
Yes.
Kalmashpad, right? So these two stories were clearly there to establish the whole concept of Niyog, which was invoked to produce heir for the Kuru dynasty. But keeping these two in mind, how easy, difficult decision it would have been for Satyavati or for Ambika Ambalika, and how that should have affected uh, the whole equation between them. How? What are your views on that?
The idea, as we know, came from Bhishma. He was the one who suggested. But then, who would do it? That decision was taken by Satyavati, and she took it instantly that Vyasa will be the person who will do it, because Vyasa is her son. He's also the son of a great sage. So he's wise, he has the wisdom. And when the Vyasa, Parashara Vyasa lineage continues, so it will be to the benefit of the Kuru kingdom, because it will come with great wisdom, great knowledge. So that was why she chose him, and she chose him because it was allowed in those times that someone of his caliber, who had given up everything and who was focused on spiritual life, on learning, so he was the right person to do Niyoga. And at that time, she even tells Bhishma the story of her past, her encounter with Parashar. So she does not hide it. She tells it to Bhishma. And obviously, she would have had to convince Ambika and Ambalika. Now, there are two ways of looking at it. One is that probably she ordered them that you have to do it, there is no option. So, the other approach is what I have showed in my story. So, I believe that she would not be so cruel to, force her daughter-in-laws to agree to yoga. She would have convinced them in the best possible way. And this is a very interesting decision, because of this decision, even Ambika and Ambalika's lives had some kind of a uh,
Meaning.
goal, meaning.
Yeah.
Otherwise, what would have happened? They were widows, they had no husband, no children, so they would just be there living their own life, nothing, a colorless life. But because of this decision, both their sons, Ambika and Ambalika's sons, sat on the throne of Hastinapura for different periods, and their grandchildren became king. Of course, a lot of things happened after that. So, an important role was played by both Ambika and Ambalika, and that happened because of Satyavati's decision. So, it was a very important decision that she took, and I believe that she did not force them, but she would have rather convinced them to. Of course, we don't know because it's not mentioned very clearly in the Mahabharata. So, this is a creative liberty that I have taken. But I believe that she would not be so cruel as to, literally force them to agree to this. But she would have convinced them.
No, but it is actually mentioned to some extent when she is talking to Bhishma. She actually talks about Ambika and Ambalika, right? She talks about that these young girls, they are suffering,
Correct.
and
Correct.
so this point that you have mentioned is not without a basis in Mahabharat. Mahabharat has this part where Satyavati has been shown expressing concern for the
Concern for them.
future
Yes.
of Ambika and Ambalika,
Yes.
and that concern was not the way the dialogue has been constructed. It is not only from the perspective of the Hastinapur throne or the Kuru dynasty, it is
Yes.
also from the perspective of the two women.
Correct.
And this also shows the human side of Satyavati, that she was not only the Iron Lady, she also has a, maybe you can call it a heart of wax or whatever. But she had a human side that has been shown, and you have tried to touch upon that as well through Ambika when she is explaining the story to the character that you have invented in your story. One interesting question came to my mind, and I mean, it's basically what you think about it, because I don't think there is a, basis to answer this in the book or anywhere. Do you think Satyavati or Ambika or Ambalika would have been alive during the Mahabharat when this Kurukshetra war happened, to see the destruction in front of themselves and go through the misery of the same thing which she tried to avoid? Right, this is exactly what she tried to avoid, and it ended up happening. And what do you think? Was she there? Was she not there? Or the gods spared her the misery because of the life she led? Or she was punished for her actions to be alive to see the destruction of the very dynasty she so closely held together and preserved?
I don't think she would have been there because all of them leave for the forest that we know. But what happens there, we don't know. In the case of Dhritarashtra, Gandhari, and others, we know what happens. It is very clearly told.
Yes.
But in the case of Satyavati, we don't know what happened. We were just told that she leaves, and she leaves quite early. So it is unlikely that she would have stayed in the forest alive for so many
For
years,
that long, yeah.
for that long, because the reason she went to the forest was to give up life,
Avoid
to
this.
end the life, to end the
Not to
life and
avoid
move
this
on.
also.
To avoid this also, because that is what Vyasa tells her. So I don't think she would have been alive and suffered knowing that all this has happened. She knew that all this would happen because Vyasa told her. So that is why she agreed to his decision that it's time to leave. There is nothing you can do. And even if she was there, probably she would also have been insulted by Duryodhana, and that would have been something which would be very difficult for her to bear.
Yeah,
It would
even
have
more
been very
miserable.
difficult for Vyasa also to bear, because Vyasa also would
Even for
respect his
Bhishma
mother.
also, to some extent,
Yes,
I
yes,
believe, right?
yes,
And Bhishma had was destined to go through struggles and misery. He That was the curse
because
that
he
he
has a
was given.
curse. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so he had to have a long and difficult life, full of struggle. Bhishma's life
struggles.
was designed like that, destined to
Yes,
be like that.
yes.
So Bhishma's suffering is okay, because that's what he was built for.
It was a
And maybe
curse.
towards the end, he was very happy to go, and
Yes,
that's what we actually see when Bhishma goes away. And if they had to show that fate to Satyavati, they would have kept her there rather than giving her this, what you say,
and
send off.
anyway, it is not a very happy exit for Satyavati, because she
Yes.
went knowing that the kingdom that she took all the effort to protect would go through huge chaos in the future, that brothers would fight each other. She had an idea that that would happen, and she could, with her wisdom, she would have estimated what would be the end result. So it is not that she achieved everything and she died in a contented way. It would have been unhappy, but she finished her life journey. Whatever she had to contribute, she did it, and she left.
So, before we carry on this conversation with Deepak, there is one message for our audience. If you guys have any questions, feel free to type in. We would be happy to take those questions. And in the meantime, there is one question that has been asked by one of the viewers. I would put that to you. The question is, who is the other Iron Lady in Mahabharat, in your opinion? So, Satyavati, we all know of now. 40 minutes we have spent talking about that Iron Lady. Now, who you think was other Iron Lady that is there in Mahabharat, in your opinion?
I would say that it is Draupadi. She was definitely an iron lady, the a popular picture that comes through many books and stories is that she's a weak lady. She suffered, she kept crying always, but that is just one view. She was in reality a very powerful lady. So when Yudhishthira was the emperor of Indraprastha, she was the one who was running the finance ministry. She was the one who was handling the treasury, and she was the one responsible for Dana Dharma. So I have a theory that we know that during the Vastraharana, if we look at critical edition, it says Dharma saved her. So what
Yes.
is this dharma? There is a question mark. Is it Yama dharma, or what is it? What is dharma? My belief is it could be various things. It could be the dharma she has done, because dharma rakshati rakshita. She did dharma sitting on the throne by feeding so many people, by giving away money to those who deserved it. She gave away cows. Of course, it was not her money, it was the kingdom's money, but she was interested and she did dana dharma. And we all know that even she continued it during the exile, when she would feed everybody. Only when she had her food, then the Akshaya Patra would get over. So she was practicing dharma, so that dharma saved her. So, according to me, she was a very strong lady who ruled as a empress, and then later on also she stood by her family. So there is a very interesting story wherein after she's abducted by Jayadratha, uh, the sage Markandeya comes and he tells the story of Savitri, who is another very powerful lady. So if you ask another iron lady, I would probably say Savitri, because she was also very clear and determined. So after telling that story, the sage says, just like Savitri saved Satyavan, Draupadi will save you. She tells that to Yudhishthira. So that shows
Correct.
what a powerful lady Draupadi was. So she was, according to me, an iron lady. She was very clear, but her story went through so many ups and downs, and there are so many myths about her, because of which this fact, according to me, does not get projected. But according to me, Draupadi is definitely an iron lady. Even Kunti, to quite an extent, is an iron lady, because she was a single mother. Uh, Pandu had died. The other wife had given up her life, and she had the responsibility of five children. And she took that responsibility, and she did a very good job. So
And
all the
under the
five
constant
Pandavas,
threat to their life.
yes, under the threat to her life, or to their lives, and all five of them did great great work. So, and the reason for that was definitely Kuti's upbringing, the way she brought them up. So, according to me, she is also a very powerful lady.
So that brings to me to another interesting thought. In the beginning, you talked about that Draupadi was the character who you would have picked up to write about, but there has been enough written about her, and that is why you chose Satyavati and not Draupadi. Now,
Yes.
there is a thought that I have on that in that regard. I would like to share it with you and the audience, and if there are any aspiring authors in the audience, to them also. That Draupadi, if you read Mahabharata, if anybody has read Mahabharata, the original unabridged text, they would never consider Draupadi as a weak lady, right? She was the one who rode like a lioness in the Kuru court, and she
Yes.
basically scared Dhritarashtra to that extent that he ended up giving back everything to Yudhishthir and his brothers, right? I mean, imagine the roar that she would have caused that in the Kuru Sabha, and that's not a weak lady. She does that again. She scolds Yudhishthir also during the Aranya Parva. She scolds the Matsyaraj, Virat, during the Kichak episode. And she demands Bhim, right? She did not go to Yudhishthir or Arjun, right? She knew that
Yes.
Yudhishthir will always take the side of Dharma, and maybe he will try to do the uncontroversial, or the rather the easy path, or whatever you call it. And Arjun will never defy Yudhishthir. Arjun will say,
Yes.
okay, मैं भैया से पूछ के करूंगा. And she knew that Bhim was someone who would do what she wanted, right?
Yes.
And she does that, right? And she had experimented on that before as well, right? With the Bhim doing what Draupadi wanted. We had another episode in the Mahabharat where Bhim had demonstrated that, right? When he goes and fights the entire Gandharvas and Yakshas to bring the flower to Draupadi. So Draupadi
Yes.
was not a weak or the subdued woman or a crying woman. Despite that, we see so many accounts of Draupadi who show her this way. Now, the only conclusion I can draw from this is that most of these people who have written so much about Draupadi, especially the ones who talk about her being infatuated with Karn, or she being a lady who tried to insult Duryodhan and a lot of other things, they have not even read Mahabharata. Now, if you read the Mahabharata, and if they have read the Mahabharata, and despite that they are writing this kind of story, then it's a bad fan fiction, and they should be called out. And that is why this is even more reason to write about Draupadi.
Correct.
Right? If there are, why are myths being created? Somebody is creating the myths, and nobody is countering them. Correct. And the way to counter them is that we are doing that effort by creating mythbusters. But imagine if a person of a caliber of, let's say, Shivaji Samant or Ramdhari Singh Dinkar writing Rashmi
Yes.
Rati,
Yes.
they are very, and that is how myths are created, right? In
Yes.
yesterday's conversation, Madhurima talked about Michael Madhusudan Datta,
Yes.
Meghnadwat.
Yes.
The myths are so powerful because they have been written by really accomplished, talented writers.
Correct.
These are good books. And when you read those books, I mean, if it was some substandard author, these myths would not have been this strong, right? The word they have
Correct.
created, the myths they have built, is so believable that you actually drop the, आप अपना उसमें आप खो जाते हो इन द सेंस, राइट? आप फिर उसमें वो सही गलत लॉजिक वो सब ढूंढना आप भूल जाते हो, और उस वजह से क्या होता है कि वो मिथ बहुत स्ट्रांग हो जाता है. और अगर
Correct.
उसको काउंटर करने का मेरे हिसाब से एक ही तरीका है कि इक्वली अकॉम्प्लिश्ड ऑथर्स शुड राइट द मोर एक्यूरेट अकाउंट्स. So when you have a pile of books saying Draupadi was in love with Karn, there should be a bigger pile of books saying that no, Karn was the reason for all the misery in her life. Right?
Correct.
She had met Karn only twice face to face in her life. Once he tried to kill her father, and then the second time he tried to disrobe her. Now,
Yes.
any woman in the right mind would not fall for this kind of a person. And this third thing, his son was probably as old as Draupadi.
Hmm.
Right. So he was an uncle who tried to kill her father because she did not pick him. Why should she pick you? What entitlement that gives you that just because you attended the swamvar, somebody is entitled to pick you. So the this kind of belief that I have, that if that should not be the reason to not write about Draupadi, that should rather be the reason to write more about Draupadi, so that there is more and more pile of authentic accounts which people cannot then refute, right? And it should be by equally accomplished authors. So for a Dinkar, you should have a Maithili Sharan Gupta who is saying this is what happened, right? Instead of so you have to have that balancing, correct? Otherwise, the myths will keep getting propagated, and the problem happens. I have this personal opinion. I am not sure how true it is, that people are inherently very lazy in the entertainment industry. They do not want to do the hard work. So when it comes to researching for their projects, they do not want to read the 10,000 pages of Mahabharata or 6 7,000 pages of Mahabharata, right?
Correct.
They just, like, I keep joking with my family whenever they put up that Star Plus wala Mahabharata on Hotstar, and I tell them कि इन्होंने बी आर चोपड़ा की महाभारत पे रिसर्च किया. Right? For them, the research material was B.R. Chopra's Mahabharat, while they had the actual book available. Right? You can go and buy the book. You can even download it for free from internet. Right? Kishri Mohan Ganguly's translation is freely available on so many places, which can be downloaded and read. तो ये एक लेजीनेस भी है हमारी इंडस्ट्री की कि
And just one point in B.R. Chopra serial, they give credit to Bori, Bhandarkar Oriental Research
हाँ,
Institute.
and yet they
But then
deviate so much
whatever they
from
are given, they go opposite to that and create myths.
या सो दैट इज अनदर प्रॉब्लम दीपक कि आप फिक्शनल अकाउंट लिख रहे हो, आप उसको या तो जैसे रामायण के बारे में मुझे एक अच्छी चीज लगती थी कि रामायण के हर एपिसोड के बाद
Yes,
रामानंद सागर स्क्रीन पे आते
he
थे,
will
राइट?
come. Yes, he would come.
और वो एक्सप्लेन करते थे,
Yes,
करेक्ट? अब वो चाहे वो
very
इसलिए हो
transparent.
कि वो कंपेल्ड थे कि भाई कंट्रोवर्सी ना हो बिकॉज इट्स सच ए रिवेred टेक्स्ट एंड सच लाइक एवरीबॉडी इज वर्शिपिंग राम एंड ही नीड्स टू
But it
क्लैरिफाई इफ देयर
created
आर एनी
transparency.
डाउट. But yes, he created that transparency कि भाई ये है, right? B.R. Chopra did exact opposite. He claimed authenticity while being
Correct.
inauthentic, right? And I keep bringing this up that he thought that Barbaric was an important character to be brought in the TV version, which Vyasa does not have in his version, right? But he did not think Dhaumya was important enough character to be there,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
So the importance given to the character by Vyas versus the later adaptations also shows where our research and where our what you say motivations lie. And in this case, I'm not saying B.R. Chopra had some ulterior motives. He was choosing entertainment as the motive,
Entertainment.
and
That is
it becomes very easy to have the characters with gray shades rather than having
yes.
everything black and white, right? So
Correct.
he would
Correct.
have probably picked up and given some motivation to the this side also. Ki that bhai Duryodhan was not all bad, Karna was also not all bad. While there were some shortcomings in Duryodhishthir also, correct? So this is probably yeah, and Pranshu has very rightly pointed out Satyaki is missing, right? He is such an important character, and without Satyaki you can't imagine Mahabharat if you have read the text. But they have chosen to ignore Satyaki also. And each of these characters and each of these stories play a very important role, right? Every story comes at a particular point. Like yesterday, when we were talking about Madhavi, we actually insisted upon discussing this, that at what juncture the story is told and by
Yes.
whom, to whom, and why.
And what was the
Because
reason? Yes.
if you pick up only the relevant, I mean the small segment of the story without getting into the context, you would not understand it, right?
Yes.
अब
Yes.
उसमें बहुत सारा टेक्स्ट है, एंड इफ यू वांट टू अंडरस्टैंड द टेक्स्ट फुल्ली, you need to know the details, you need to put the hard work into this, and you actually we talked about the whole Kuru dynasty so far, and there is an interesting point one viewer has made, that even Kripacharya is missing in the new ones. Now
Yes.
Kripacharya is an interesting character because if you see, Kripacharya was the adopted son of Shantanu. He must have also been somewhere in the line of succession, correct? So Bhishma refused to become the king because of his vow. Why Kripacharya did not play any role in this? And if he did, what was that role that he played in this equation? It's a very interesting character that we have, which not many people talk about. So Deepak, there is one question before we
Yeah.
get
Yeah. Yeah.
into this. Let's take this question. I think you are
Yeah.
reading
I'm
that
seeing it.
only.
Yeah.
So this question is from Rajni, and the question is, what is the one characteristic that women of today can emulate from Satyavati?
I think it is clarity. She was very clear. Clarity of purpose. She was very clear about what she wanted and how she was going to do it. So there was no confusion in her mind. There was no weakness. There was no fear that if I do this, what will happen? If I do this, that will happen. That here is a great sage. How can I, I am after all a low caste fisherwoman. How can I put a condition before a great sage? So there was nothing of that sort in her mind. She was very clear. She knew what she wanted and she asked it, she demanded it, she got it. And even while taking decisions, she kept in mind the future while taking the decision. Not her personal future, but she kept in mind the future of the kingdom where she lived. Now, she became a part of Hastinapura, and she lived her entire life for the kingdom, not for herself. So, if you look at it, she didn't get anything. She was queen, yes, she sat on the throne, but it was like, a throne
A
of
burden.
nails, crown
Yeah,
of
it was a burden.
thorns. Yeah, it was a burden. It was not a great thing that, she sat and enjoyed royal life with servants
I mean, she had
lining up
seen
in front.
her husband die in
Yes,
front
her
of her.
husband
She had
died.
seen her children die in front of her.
Yes,
She had seen the misery. And she was probably aware of the misery her grandchildren and great
yes,
grandchildren
and
will
what would
go through.
happen in the future? Yes. So
So,
she
so
did
she
lead a
was
happy
not a
life,
very
but
exactly.
she took decisions keeping in mind the future, not just her future, but the future of her family, her kingdom. So she had that clarity in her mind. So I believe that is a very important characteristics that everyone can learn, not just women. Clarity of purpose.
So, so you mentioned caste somewhere in your answer, and
Yeah.
I think that there is a popular narrative that is used, especially by picking the stories of Eklavya and Karn, that there was a caste-based discrimination and everything. But if people have read it, they would know that there was no such discrimination. And
Yes.
Satyavati's story is another proof of this, that a fisherwoman became the queen and her children became the descendant of the king, the Kuru king, and nobody bats an eyelid, right? Nobody
And nobody
complains about
protests.
it, nobody
Nobody says
protests
anything
about
about it.
it, correct?
Yeah.
Had it been such a widespread discriminatory thing that people make it out to be, there must have been few voices, right, who would have said ki ye satya ye theek nahi. Like if you go back in Ramayana, people had voice, right? And the kings used to listen to their voice. So it is not that the society had changed so much that people lost to have any voice of protest against the king, right? We have the stories where people did not like the king and they basically dethroned the king and got another king in his place, correct? Like the whole story of Prithu, the
Yes.
rishis got rid of Vain and create got Prithu to rule in his stead because Vain was not a great king.
I
So
think
I'm
even
saying,
Savitri's father-in-law,
yes,
the citizens, they throw out the king and then they come to the forest to invite him
they
back.
take him back. Yes, after
Yes.
the Yam episode. So I'm
Yes.
saying that the citizenry, the common folk, or even if you go the other way, like you had all your priests, your advisors who had
Correct.
voice, right? Who would
Yes.
voice their opinion, and they were all very powerful people when it came to having the ears of the king. And it was
Correct.
not always like they would say what pleases the king. They were not a bunch
Yes.
of yes men, and
Correct.
that is what is basically it shows this Satyavati story, that what happened to her shows exactly that there was no caste discrimination. And while we know that current story is widely misrepresented, Sooth was not even a low caste to begin with, right? Similarly, this equal footing, like Nishad, were not very lower in the social order than the Matsya, like the fishermen or the other tradesmen. They were not very. It was not more like a I am above you or you are beneath me. They were all equal, right? The kings of Ang were always Sooth. Kings who were of Magad were always Magad, who were bards, right? I mean, similar to Sutar. So it was not like that there was any compulsion to you, that you can't climb the social hierarchy if you have the right talent. And we have Kichak as an example, right? Who became the Senapati of Matsya because he had the power, right? So all these things are basically a proof that how badly our epics have been represented
Misinterpreted.
by the modern retellings. And it is an important thing and it is a need of the hour for people to pick up the mantle and write the stories which are more true to the authentic source, which tell the right story, which tell the right version, and if anything they enhance the original text, they complement it rather than contradicting it. Because
Correct.
contradicting is very dangerous, because in our society, Mahabharat and Ramayana are not just novels, they are not Harry Potter.
Correct.
that you can just enjoy it for the purpose of entertainment. People draw inspirations from these books, and they say that you like to be like your heroes. You want to imitate your heroes. So it is important to pick the right heroes. And if you start whitewashing characters like Ravan and Duryodhan, you are in trouble, because then there will be a lot more people wanting to become like Duryodhan and Ravan, and even Karn to a large extent, who I mean, you don't need to draw a sympathetic figure of them. You need to tell the story as it is and let people draw their conclusions. And I keep encouraging people to read more, to get through the original text rather than relying on second and third and fourth hand accounts, which are very washed out. And we have seen that it does not matter which version of Mahabharat you read. If any unabridged version of Mahabharat, the stories are pretty much consistent, characters are pretty much consistent. There might be minor deviation here and there in one version to another, but they would not go drastically in one direction or another direction. And Bori has done a great job at it, so hopefully people will pick that up. So we are coming towards the end of our session, Deepak. It's
Yes.
already 1 hour, and let's not extend it any further. And I think we have covered most of the questions that we have got so far. Somebody has pointed out that Eklavya story is also misrepresented. Yes, it is. And there is a blog on Sutradhar website also, a blog post which talks about who was Eklavya. I would encourage people to read that to know more about Eklavya. We would not spend too much time on this call for this. So, Deepak, any last words that you want to add before we conclude this session?
Yes, in conclusion, through this book, we have tried to project great women from the Vedic period. And there are different types of women. Some of them were women of wisdom, some of them were women who ruled, some of them were women who supported, some of them were women who loved and won for a particular reason because the destiny intended that to happen. So we have different kinds of stories, and I would request people who are watching this show to please read this book, Arya. So this book tells the stories of all these women, and the idea behind writing these stories is, if you read this, you should feel that I want to know more about other such characters from the Mahabharata, and you pick up other books to read, and you pick up the original Mahabharata and read it. So that is my request to viewers. Please read more.
So,
Try to read the original Mahabharata.
thank you so much, Deepak, for being here and spending this valuable 1 hour with us. And I hope our audience has gotten to know more about Satyavati and the character of Satyavati and what important role she played in the epic Mahabharata. Before we close, let me tell our viewers that next episode of Kaisuni would be on Saturday, 7 p.m., 18th of February. And in this episode, we would be in conversation with another author, Rajni Murlidhar. And she is the author of another story in this book, Arya. And the story she has picked up is again another interesting character from Mahabharata, about whom we don't know too much into the detail. We just know that she was a phase in the life of Arjun. And we have already talked about one woman in Arjuna's life in the first episode, with the second episode with Rohini Chitrangada. And this is the woman Arjun met before he met Chitrangada. So let's connect together, come together on Friday, next Saturday, 18th February, 7 p.m., to talk about this important woman in Arjun's life. And we will talk to author about it. Thank you very much. Dhanyawad.
Thank you.